All right, y'all. Welcome back to Room A-108. As always, with David, I'm CJ. Today we're gonna touch on. We're gonna do a little bit of CFP recap. The first year of the 12-team format. We're gonna dive back into a little bit of Ben Johnson and the new coaching staff for the Chicago Bears. Then we're gonna finish off with yesterday being Conference Championship Sunday. We know who's going and representing the two conferences in the Super Bowl. So we're going to touch on that a little bit. But before we get started, I got to give a shout out to Mike Vivolo. You see the shirts we got on today. GroceryStars.com. I got on a little cherry rice. What you got going on over there, Dave?
And the GOAT, Blueberry Sanders over here. So that's what's, as soon as you gave me the option to what shirt that I want, I was like, man, I got to see if they got a Barry Sanders one. So I saw they had this on there. So this is dope, man. It's cool. Much love.
Yeah,
appreciate
man.
it.
So Mike shot us a message. He saw some of our content on IG like we had going on, and he sent us a message, wanted to send us some shirts. They got a whole dope line over there, man. Go head over to GroceryStars.com. Check it out. Follow him on Instagram, Team Vivalo, Vivalo. Go ahead, give him a follow, show some support for him. And thanks again, Mike. We appreciate it. But Dave, how you doing, man? What's going on, bro?
Hey, it's a lot has happened since we were last in here. You know, Room A-108 kind of been going through a roller coaster right now. So last episode we were touching on, you know, the college football playoff. We hadn't even had the championship game yet. You know, that's went by. So I guess we can touch on that very briefly in one or two sentences. We can talk about the teams that we don't. Neither one of us.
I'll ask you first because I know I'm gonna give you the floor because I know we on two opposite ends of the argument when it comes to the expansion from 4 to 12. I was a little bit surprised that they went, skipped 8 and went straight to 12.
Yeah.
But I know how you felt about it. But how did you feel from start to finish the first year of the 12 team? Any tweaks or changes you want to see going into it? I'll let you get your roll off on that.
Yeah. So I have two different perspectives of it. I have one from just a college football fan perspective, and then I have the inner analyst that I think I am. So for this first year, it definitely had more downs than ups. I mean, there's only a handful of competitive games that they had. I feel like the selection process needs to be refined for sure. The whole buys, first round buys, that needs to be adjusted. Every single one of the first round buy teams lost, and I don't think they need to change it because of that reason. But in the NFL, it's a little different. Having that first round buy, you only have a 2-week layoff, whereas in college, it's almost a month before they play. And this other team, they're fine tuning the week before, and getting ready. And it's not even like that first round buy is benefiting them, and they're getting that home field advantage. It's a neutral site, and that other team has already played at their home field. So I think something kind of has to be approached there. But all in all, it was a success from what they wanted. So they wanted to be able to have two teams that wouldn't have even made a 14 playoff, let alone just the two national champion selections that would have picked way back in the BCS days. Which is aligning, like I said, maybe even episode 1, they're aligning with basketball with March Madness. It's like everybody has a shot. Like I said, my only worry is that are we going to get to a point where, like, this year, Ohio State didn't make it to a conference championship game, but they knew that they were still going to make it. Are we going to get to a point where they're able to bench their starters? Something that's never been able to happen in college football. And I don't want it to go in that route. But other than that, I mean, I'm just not going to get too worked up about it because I know where it's going. And it's just like I'm preparing myself for it. But, I mean, it was cool. The ratings were lower this year than usual for the final, which is surprising because these are two of the biggest teams in the country, programs in the country. So we'll see. I think it'll get better. First year, the 14 playoff struggled a little bit too. So we'll see. But I'm curious to know how do you feel about it besides the teams that were in it?
So, I mean, I think we both mentioned it in episodes previous that, we knew it was inevitable that they were going to make this move and expand.
It's going to keep expanding.
Yeah, but like the thing about it is whether it stayed at 4, whether it went to 8, 12, and then in the coming years it's inevitable, but it's going to 16. Whoever's left on the outside is going to cry about it.
Oh.
It don't matter if it's 4, 16. You can go all the way to 32, and somebody going to cry about being left out. So that part of it, I wasn't really too worried about. But you kind of mentioned it that they got exactly what they wanted this first year. I think it was as close to a home run as you can get. You had the championship game ended up being the 7 seed against the 8 seed. So, the thing that I personally would want to see tweaked, kind of, I think you might agree, would just be like the way they ended up seeding. I'm not really cool with the automatic buys just strictly to, the conference champions. And then you end up with teams like Boise State and Arizona State getting buys over teams that they're clearly not better than. If you watch the games, those are 2 teams that were not better than Ohio State. Yep. 2 teams that weren't better than Notre Dame, 2 teams that weren't even better than Texas or Georgia, but they got the buys because, they handled their business and they won their conference championship, but, just unilaterally, awarding buys based on that is something that I think they're going to have to revisit. But other than that, like I said, it's as close to a home run as probably they wanted. And me and you both can agree that, cash is king.
Oh, absolutely.
And any way that they can, get their hands on a few more dollars, when you look at the bids for these games and, the broadcast rights for these games is, through the roof. So we knew this was coming, and we know that by 2030 it's going to be 16 teams, probably before that. But
at the least.
Yeah, it's going to be 16.
Yeah.
I think 16 would be a cool spot to sit at.
So 2 things I wanted to touch on. First thing is, like you said, I agree. College football got what they wanted because before this 12-team playoff, when they went to 4, you're even seeing it now with 12-team playoff, but before there were significantly more teams, these bowl games, the best players weren't playing because there's nothing to play for. Now that all of these major bowls where you have Sugar Bowl, Fiesta Bowl, Orange Bowl, Rose Bowl, all these big bowl games that are used to generating all this money, they're getting money again because their games mean something again. So it's a smart way for them to kind of manipulate the system and, make sure they get their money and take care of their original bowl games. Years ago, this is years ago, back when I was a heavy advocate for a playoff system, I always thought the healthy number was 10 because that was the number. There was always 5 major bowl games. You had the Fiesta Bowl, Rose Bowl, Orange Bowl, Sugar Bowl, and then a national championship. Those were the 5. So I always thought 10 teams would deserve to make the playoffs and just kind of use those bowl games to represent each one of these playoff games, kind of like they're doing now. They just expanded to 12, but they pretty much went that same route. I'm not against it. I'm against making the season irrelevant. That's what I'm against. Like we said, I use the example, like neither you or I really watch anything in season for men's basketball because it really doesn't matter. You don't have to. There's no reason to. All that matters is March Madness. I mean, it is what it is. But at the end of the day, it's the power of the dollar. My opinion doesn't matter. Just voicing how I feel about it. But they're going to do what they're going to do regardless, and I kind of have to adapt. But I think I agree with you. Next year, I think that they need to just go with the best 4 teams get that first round bye. I think they need to maybe move it a week sooner. Maybe don't have so much of a layoff in between. But the biggest thing they need to approach is the transfer portal. Right now, I actually think they're kind of working on it, but right now there's 2 different windows for the transfer portal. One of them takes place before the bowl games, which I think is absolute mess. And it does a disservice to the teams that make the playoff because now either those players or that team can't go after that first wave of people that are entering the transfer portal. So those are some of the things that I think need to be addressed. And I think if those get addressed, it could be a lot better. And I think it will get a lot better. I mean,
so I didn't come here thinking I was going to ask you this question, but you said something that made me think about it.
Oh shoot!
in terms of, like guys sitting out the bowl games.
Yeah.
Do you think that it's possible that with NIL now and these guys actually getting money, that more of them will start playing? Because
No.
I think that the thing was always they sat out because they didn't want to risk injury, lower their draft status or anything like that. Maybe not necessarily like that top tier players, but with like that lower tier 1, top tier 2 level guys, since they already getting the bread, do you think more of them will play? Because, Cam Ward played a half. Shador and Travis played. Do you think that in the future more guys will play?
So I don't, because at the end of the day, that's still only a fraction of the money that they'll be seeing at the next level. And I think that's ultimately what their goal is to make it to the NFL. I mean, that's the point of playing college football is, you want to be in the NFL. Cam, I'm sure you agree. He probably wouldn't have played if he wasn't chasing the record. Am I right? Because once he broke the record, he sat. So I think his was more of a personal thing. Shador and Travis, I think it was their allegiance to Deion. I don't think if Deion was their coach, I don't think they would have played that game either. So I think they were more so anomalies to it. But I do agree. I mean, the last 5 years, you wouldn't have seen them play any other time. But I don't think you'll see more players play because there's still a limited amount of money that they can give these players. It's not like everybody on the team is getting an NIL contract. I think it's only like 5 to 10% of the players on the team total are getting any kind of reimbursement of the NIL. And I think if those teams don't make the playoffs, I don't see them playing. I'm not a fan of sitting out, but if I was in their position, I wouldn't play either. For what? Your draft stock is what it is already. It's like, why mess it up?
Yeah, I was just curious. We'll see how that goes.
You feel the same way?
Yeah, kinda.
Yeah,
kinda. I think it's a possibility that you might see an increase of guys playing just because, you look at somebody like Carson Beck gets a $5-6+ million deal in the portal to go to Miami. If he would have entered the draft, he's not seeing a contract at the slot he would have been drafted at.
Yeah, no.
To get that kind of money. So in that spot, are you okay with, hey, I'm gonna play? So I mean, we'll see.
He was projected to before the season started. I mean, he was projected to be the first quarterback, arguably him or Shador, and then he just had a bad season. So he needed this season again to get his draft stock back up, which is beneficial to him, getting money, get that bag before getting the bigger bag. So
you got any love you want to show to the two teams that ended up playing in the championship?
Yeah, enjoy it now because we back next year. Michigan is back next year. You better enjoy this time.
But pivot and transition a little bit. We talked about it, once again in our last Facebook Live episode.
But yeah, I've been looking forward to this.
The Ben Johnson news broke in the last week, and then the hirings for his staff have kind of hit the news in the last 24, 36 hours.
Yes, sir.
Thoughts, feelings, what you got?
The first thing you said on the live, you were like, man, you got your boy. So that's who I thought was best for the team. I thought it's the best for Caleb. The way the league is moving. I mean, I've said this numerous times. I mean, it's always these young coaches with, a whole different perspective of the game. And they seem to be the coaches that are thriving as a whole right now. I mean, with what just happened on Conference Championship weekend, I mean, of course, Andy Reid is still Andy Reid, but yeah, no, I was. It's crazy that it happened so fast. The last episode, if you watch these episodes in order, the last thing we were talking about was our trauma bond and how we just knew we were going to mess up this pick. And you sent me a text at like 7 a.m, 8 a.m, like, hey man, we got our boy. And I'm like, oh wow, we really didn't mess it up. Now it's still TBD, to be determined. I mean, he's never been a head coach before, but I feel like they made at least the most logical decision that is pretty much setting us up for, on paper, seems like success. And with Allen now as the D coordinator, I mean, Doyle, right? Declan Doyle is coming in, but I mean, I pretty much think he's even spoke on this at his press conference that the offensive coordinator is going to be more of a film guru because he's still calling the plays. Ben Johnson's going to be calling the plays. So
an errand boy.
Yeah.
He's going to be Ben Johnson's errand boy.
Yeah. So he said it's going to be a lot of long hours or whatever. So it's almost like an apprentice to what he's doing.
When you listen to what he said, it makes sense that it's a super young dude.
Oh,
a
yeah.
lot of energy.
Yeah.
You couldn't have listened to his comments about who he envisioned being in that role and thinking it was
have an OG come in.
Yeah, some 45, 50 plus year old dude. Like, nah. Yeah, he's going to be his errand boy. He's going to be heavy in the film, heavy behind the scenes, because now, Ben Johnson has to pivot to, zooming out from just offense. Now he has to oversee the whole team. So you need a guy, with a lot of energy, like he said, to, run film and, cut it up and make sure that those meetings run smoothly. But the reason why, I got a little bit more optimism than, the people who try to compare it to Matt Nagy, which doesn't make any sense. It's the first time I think since probably like Dave Wanstead in the 90s where the Bears went and got the most coveted guy that was on the market.
Yeah.
It's always been retread hires or tier 2, tier 3 guys.
Yep.
Dallas is doing what the Bears used to do. Brian Schottenheimer doesn't really give you any sort of energy and enthusiasm when that news hits your phone.
But they got Flus. They got Flus.
Good for them.
Hey, so a buddy of mine is a big Cowboy fan, unfortunately. But he was so mad about Schottenheimer, which is justified. I get that. But I was like, hey, man, I feel how I feel about Eberflus, but he is a hell of a defensive coordinator. Like, you immediately saw the effects of him leaving the team. That defense kind of.
But let's juxtapose these two real quick. And the difference between you got first-time head coach Ben Johnson.
Yeah.
First-time head coach Brian Schottenheimer.
Yeah.
Who are their DCs who were former head coaches that they have to lean on? At least, when you say, all right, I get to lean on Dennis Allen, like, all right, cool. He was interim head coach in 2 different spots, but he was never looked at as someone who, and hey, Saints fans, Raiders fans, correct me if I'm wrong, but because I'm just here in Chicago, but he was never looked at in my eyes as someone who blew games in the fashion that Eberflus blew games. Time management.
Yeah, not even close.
Not calling timeouts in situations where he was supposed to. Super soft defense late in games and just giving up yards. And so the way we look at it as Bears fans is like, okay, Ben Johnson has, a former head coach with experience to lean on in situations where he can. And then you pivot to Dallas fans and they're like, all right, we got this dude. And who does he have to lean on? Flus? Like, I know they pissed.
Schottenheimer better go to his dad for his advice, man. Be like,
he gonna have to. He gonna have to, man.
Yeah. So yeah, no, I agree. But like Ben Johnson, I think that's a great hire. One of the things I touched on this on a live episode, man. I want to touch on it here is that I have a vivid memory of Eberflus's introductory press conference, and he was very political in all of his answers. Like, yeah, hard work. We're gonna go do the right thing. Kind of just all BS. Yeah. And although Ben Johnson sprinkled a little bit in there, I think all coaches kind of have to generally, just because you still got PR you got to worry about and everything. But he didn't shy away from any questions, and he didn't give you any vague answers. They asked him about the offense. He's like, look, I'm not going to drop Detroit's playbook and give it to us. We're going to break it down to the bare bones and build it around Caleb. He didn't say, oh, it's a team thing. He's like, no, this is going to be about Caleb. Like, we're going to build it around him. And he didn't shy away from anything. I like the way he carried himself. And what you were saying, too, about Eberflus, what he didn't have. When you have players that celebrate when a coach is fired, there's something wrong. He didn't have control of that locker room. And now you look at how upset the Detroit players are to lose Ben Johnson. So you can already see the impact they have on the locker room, and you see the differences there. So I'm very optimistic, cautiously, because I think you have to move that way as a Bears fan, because otherwise you're just destined for a miserable time. But I really see us treading in the right direction. Hopefully, the draft will be coming up, free agency will be coming up, so we'll see how that works. But coaching wise, I mean, I think basically people besides the Patriots, nobody really started hiring until we took Ben. People were waiting to see how that was going to fall. So we kind of set the tone for everybody else.
I think the thing that kind of impressed me and got me the most excited about his press conference were things that he didn't say more than things that he did say.
Yeah.
And two of the things that he didn't say that I was thrilled that he didn't say were charter franchise and tradition.
Yeah.
I'm so tired of hearing it. Like,
yeah,
for anybody my age, around my age, and definitely anybody younger than me, the Bears' tradition in our eyes is a bunch of losing. So nobody wants to hear charter franchise, bunch of tradition. Like the last time y'all had sustained success, players wore leather helmets, and it wasn't no face mask. So I'm tired of hearing charter franchise tradition. So I'm glad neither one of those things came out of his mouth.
Yeah. No, that's big. And it seems like he's grounded. Like he's a realist. He's aware of the situation he's in, the uphill battle. But I think Warren. So he came at the right time. Warren wants this stadium built, so we need to be successful because we need the fans' backings for that. Pole's job's on the line, so you have the two biggest shot callers behind the scenes in a situation where they kind of have to, like, hey man, we got to win. So he's in a good situation. So I think he'll have their full support. So
and then another thing that's exciting about Ben Johnson and what's totally different lane than Matt Nagy is called plays at a high level, led the top ranked offense for the last 3-4 years, 5 years maybe, somewhere around that 3-4 year mark. So at no point was Matt Nagy coming in here with that type of resume. So
Matt Nagy is basically what Doyle is right now.
Yeah,
that's basically what he is.
For sure. But you're hoping that he comes in here with a game plan to get Caleb, on schedule, on time, seeing it, letting the ball go, and cutting all of the theatrics within the pocket and outside the pocket. Because if he can do that, like, you got something there.
Tell me what you think. I can see him. He's very creative with his play calling. So we were texting during the NFC Championship game, not the NFC Championship, the NFC divisional round game, and they did the double pitch. And you're like, man, hire this man tomorrow. Because even Tom Brady, the guy that's pretty much seen it all, he was like, what? I've never seen that before. So he's creative. Now, sometimes I think you can get carried away with that, which what happened later on in the game. He got too creative. I understand why, because they were in a hole. They needed to make something happen. Wasn't the right call, but I can see him designing a lot of plays to allow Caleb to go off script too, to kind of appease to his strengths still. But I think it's been across the board, whether you watch ESPN, Fox, anything. He needs to be on schedule. He needs to catch his rhythm. He needs to go through the reads properly. And he's able to do it. I mean, you've seen, the couple weeks that Thomas Brown was OC, he was pretty solid with that stuff.
I mean, when you're constantly running for your life and you never really have 5, 6, 7 plays in a row where you're able to set your feet and actually throw in rhythm, it's hard to get a touch on those deep passes. And that was the biggest thing for him. Like I was looking at it like I did not think that his deep ball accuracy was as bad as we saw this year. I didn't see that on the scouting report.
No.
But I think that it's just a product of him never really being able to put plays together where, he dropped back, hit that back foot. All right, I could let it go. Yeah. You see it sprinkled here and there throughout the game, but it's never 3, 4, 5, 6 plays in a row where it's like, hey, boom, it's moving. It looks good. So hopefully if he's able to get that, I think that'll clean up, the accuracy issues. But, we'll see, man.
Yeah.
The coaching staff is coming together. I like it. I think you do.
Oh yeah.
So we'll see how that goes. But before we got to touch on the, conference championship Sunday before we get out of here.
Yes, sir. Hey, how'd those picks go this week, man? How'd those picks go?
Oh, that was a clean sweep for you. Clean sweep for you. I mean, the way the first game started, I knew it was looking bad from the get go. there was a couple of spots in the second and then again in the third quarter where it was looking like Washington could get back in it. And then as soon as you said it, it was like they gave the ball away. He was like, oh, this is over with.
Yeah, it's we were texting or whatever, and to me, this was my perspective of the game with between the Eagles and the Commanders. I mean, it was relatively close. I mean, I think the Eagles were kind of still, they were dominating the clock. They were dominating, the run game. They were taking the steps to pulling away that they needed to anyways. But once Lattimore and Brown kind of had that scuffle, it became more of an emotional thing. And right after that, they fumbled the kick return. Right after that, they got the roughing, not roughing the passer, the unnecessary roughness, late hit out of bounds. So I just think it was the inexperience, how young they were. They'll be a threat for a long time. I mean, they got a lot of young talent on that team. But it's, I think our first episode, I was like, man, I wouldn't be surprised if it was a Eagles Chiefs rematch, only because to me, experience means a lot when it comes down to the playoffs. And I had always said, I've said this at least 10 times now since this podcast has started, but last year the Chiefs won. They were like a 6 or 7 seed. Nobody expected them to win. This year they're the best team in the NFL, and everybody's like, oh no, they're not going to win. I'm like, man, I'm not going to not bet on Mahomes. I'm taking my bias aside. Like, do I want them to win? I don't really care if they win. If it's not the Bears, it doesn't really matter to me. So it's funny. We were talking about it before we came in. I was like, rule number 1, don't bet against Mahomes. So I'm like, man, I'm going to ride with it. Even someone commented on one of my posts. It might have been on a Roommate 108. They were like, yeah, there's a lot of questionable calls or whatever. I'm like, you have to factor that in when you're making your picks. Yeah, when the Patriots were dominant, they got the favored calls. Brady gets the favored calls. You have to overcome that to beat them. And I factor that in. And when I'm making my picks, I'm like, yeah, the Bills, on paper, they got a team that's good enough to beat them. And they almost did. But Chiefs win close games. They get the ref favorite calls. They get the NFL favorite calls.
You only really hear that narrative of, oh, the refs are on their side. It's rigged. They cheat. You only hear that in 2 occasions. One, when your bet is losing.
Yep.
When your bet is going sideways, that's, and I'm guilty of it sometimes too.
Oh, absolutely.
When your bet going sideways.
That ain't my fault. It's theirs.
Yeah, you pull that out real quick. That's first. And then secondly is when it's against a team with a lot of success.
Yeah.
You heard it about the 90s Bulls. Jordan got all the calls. You heard it when the Patriots are on their run. Oh, so they cheating for the Patriots, cheating for Brady. We in Chicago, we heard it, and this fan base said it all the time about the Packers. Packers get all the calls.
Yeah.
But it's always the team that wins.
Yeah.
So those are only 2 occasions where that narrative gets thrown out so flippantly.
Yeah.
Is when your bet going sideways or when it's a team that always wins. But, I look at, like when I made my picks for that first game, when the Washington Philly game, I looked at it like if it came down to a duel of quarterbacks, give me Jaden Daniels.
And I agree with you.
But it didn't come down to that because the people around Jaden Daniels let him down. He only had 1 turnover, which was a late garbage time pick through in the end zone. But before that, it was, they were moving the ball. It was just they couldn't hold on to it.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, hey, everything told me not to pick the Bills, but I just thought Allen was having his moment, with that team, and, I thought that was going to be the time for him to, to make it, to have his moment, but it didn't happen, and the same way I feel like everybody around Daniels let him down, I feel like Josh Allen's OC let him down on that last.
You sent me that text. You're like, Joe Brady, he couldn't have called the worst final drive.
You're chasing 3 with an opportunity to either go tie the game or go win the game.
Yeah.
Your first play on that drive is a toss to your number 2 running back. Not even Cook. I could see if it was a toss to James Cook, who was balling that game.
Yeah.
Your first play on a gotta have it drive is a toss to the backup running back.
Yeah.
Lose 2 yards, set the whole thing backwards. And then I told my brother, I was like, once you go wide receiver screen to Amari Cooper, either the next play or the 2 plays after, Amari Cooper, who is probably the 4th option in the wide receiver room, who you want to throw a wide receiver screen to. I was like breaking the 4th wall and looking at the imaginary camera on my wall. Like, are they doing this right now? Like, so it was. I hated everything about those play calls, and then you give a veteran DC like Spags an opportunity to throw a wrinkle at you on the 4th down. It got him. And
he had that in his bag, ready to go too.
Yeah, and it got him. Game over. You on the road. You can't. They gave that away with the play calls at the end, in my opinion.
Yeah, no. I mean, the Bills they were definitely equipped enough to win that game. I made that pick because I kind of predicted it so far out, and I felt I wanted to stand on my word. But I was not. I was more worried about that game than I was about the Eagles-Commanders game because, first of all, the history. I mean, that's one of the better playoff games I've seen a few years back when they went into overtime and that caused them to change the rules. That was a phenomenal game. And then when, like you said, a duel of quarterbacks is really what it comes down to when you got 2 of the best quarterbacks in the game. Man, I you just never know. I think at the end of the day, I wanted to touch on this too before I get on that. Like, everybody's in open arms about that, the tush push that they didn't give. Like, I get it. Like, yeah, you can say, oh, but it wasn't like one of those calls that was just like blatantly over the line where everybody. That didn't make or break the game because they still had a chance to win that game, and that had nothing to do with the refs.
Well, at what point does something have to fail? At what point does something have to fail enough times for you to pivot? Because
that's all that 4th and 1 was the tush push.
And like him or love him, love him or hate him, I should say. Tony Romo called it out.
Yeah,
he was saying every time they get in 4th and 1, they try to run QB sneak to the left side of the center.
Yep.
And every time they did it, it got stopped. So at what point are you gonna throw some type of wrinkle? A pitch the other way. Something. The same way Washington's. They failed the first time they ran a 2-point conversion, but the second time they got down there and ran a 2-point conversion, they had a play design where it gave Daniels options. He can either hand it off, keep it, or you can, scramble and throw, which is what he ended up doing.
Yep.
Give Josh Allen something like that in a 4th and 1. Don't just, something where it's either this and it's going to work or it's not going to work.
Yep.
You just run your head into a brick wall. Give him some options. Let him get out on the perimeter. You got guys out there for him to pitch it to, a running back to pitch it to, or wide receivers running something shallow, if it comes open. But to constantly run QB sneak left of the center and it not work, like, at what point are you going to pivot away from that?
Yeah.
So.
No, I agree, man. It was, there was a lot of things the Bills could have done to correct it and at least put it into overtime to make it a more interesting game. But
hey, I mean, at least the only thing I did get right about that pick is I said expect a thriller. And
I think I said the same thing. I was like, it's going to be a good one.
It's going to be. Don't think that was going to look anything like that first game. Nobody was going to put 55 on the other one with a 20-point margin of victory. Like we knew we weren't going to see that.
Oh yeah,
but for everybody calling it a rivalry, stop calling it a rivalry until you get one.
Right. Yeah.
Just
it's trouncing right now.
It's just, a mutual sharing of the field at this point. There ain't no rivalry because Pat doing his thing. There's no rivalry from where I see.
Yeah. Well, we got our teams for the Super Bowl. I'm not going to ask you your predictions or anything like that.
You want to save that for another one?
Yeah.
Official predictions.
We'll save the official predictions. I already said who I think is going to win it all, but I also want to take a step back, see what's going to happen, see what injuries are happening, see what's going on. But we'll touch on that. But I think it's going to be a hell of a game. I'm excited to see it. To me, I think it's 2 of the best teams in football, so I can't really be mad at it. So
I was just happy that when we got down to the final 4 teams, I looked at it like no matter who wins or whatever the matchup is, I'm gonna be excited to watch.
Yeah. Oh no, for sure. Any different combination, any one of those teams would have been
dynamic cool. Quarterbacks. Dynamic offenses.
So many stories to tell from any
legendary
one of those
coaches.
Yep.
You know, whether you're talking about, you know, Andy Reid or, you know, if Harbaugh would have ended up, you know, beating Buffalo. So, you know, it was so many different avenues you could have looked at, you know, even going back to the divisional round. So at no point was I ever looking at a team like, man, I hope this team don't win, because I ain't gonna want to watch. Like, no, I'm watching.
Hey, before we go, man, yes or no? Does Kendrick bring out Lil Wayne on stage for the halftime show? No. All right. Just no. I think it'd be smart of him if he did. They have a couple songs together, so I think he might pull him out for that, just to kind of, because there was a big outrage about Wayne not being on there or whatever, being in Louisiana.
If he does, that's the ultimate last two shovels of dirt on on a Drake Berry,
which is more of a reason why I think he will bring him out. And it's not even from Wayne's perspective. I get it, but at the same time, he's got to out because he's at home, so he's got a reason why he's able to go on there without throwing shade on his boy like that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we'll see. First, when you first ask it, first blush tells me no, but you can convince me either way that it'll happen. I'll be sitting there with my drink, my popcorn, you know, the wings and all the snacks, just waiting to see what happens.
Just enjoying the game.
For sure, man.
Yeah. Well, shoot, another episode in the books. I think this is episode 6 now, so we gotta racking up. And we got our live episodes.
At the point now where they about to start, you know, blending together, and I ain't gonna be able to keep track without looking it up.
I'm already there, man. It might be a couple years I got on you, but do us all a favor. Head over to our YouTube page, Room A-108. That's where you're gonna find all these full episodes. Across all social media platforms, you'll find our shorts, links, updates. We're always sending updates for, you know, coaching moves, any breaking news when it comes to sports. Instagram, same thing, Room_A108. Facebook, Room A108. It's going to be on all of our videos or whatever, but for these full episodes, you got to head over to YouTube, and I'm going to post our Facebook Live videos over there too, so be able to check this all out. But once again, appreciate you all for coming by. Room A108. It's been a pleasure.
Y'all. Shout out to everybody. Shout out Cold Pizza Click. Shout out Mike Vivolo. Appreciate y'all, man. Catch y'all next time.
Blueberry.